Great. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome to the webinar. This is IRUS, How Do I? And this webinar aims to show you the various reports in IRUS and how to get the most out of them for your usage data requirements. My name is Alice Hughes, and my colleagues who'll be covering this webinar are Hilary Jones, the service owner, and Laura Wong, the product manager, who both work in the IRUS team. So they'll be available at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So you can just put them in the chat. So looking at what we'll cover during this webinar, Hilary will be giving a brief overview of IRUS, the reports, and what data are being counted. Then she'll give a demonstration of the various IRUS reports, how to access them, and their uses. She's also going to point to the many support materials that we have to help you. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Hilary.
Thanks, Alice. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just an overview, just to say the IRUS R5 service was released back in December 2020, and now we've got usage data back from January 2020. We brought all of our services together into a single infrastructure. So the main service is IRUS UK, but we also provide services to institutions in Australia and New Zealand and the US, as well as OAPEN. This means we've got a really large body of data to call on. And by bringing all these IRUS services together, we've not only created efficiencies, we've also improved our ability to detect robot and rogue usage. And this gives us a lot of opportunities to explore this large aggregation of data, as well as enabling you to make comparisons internationally as well. It's completely open access and there's no login required. Just briefly, the reports and what you can do with them. In the old R4 service, there were very many reports, and this sometimes led to confusion about which one to choose. In R5, there are fewer reports, but with much more flexibility within them. Even though there are fewer reports, they'll still enable you to view total usage for a repository and/or institution, view total usage for different item types, identify the most used items across all item types or by individual item types, identify country of use, compare total usage of selected repositories by item type, and view individual item level details. And we've written several guides, which we didn't have before, to help you in using IRUS and working with the IRUS data, and I'll point these out to you in the demonstration. The reports and visualizations are based on counter master reports, so they all still are counter conformant, and they're all consistent with what other providers of counter reports would produce. The platform master report shows usage data at the repository level. Platform equates to repository in release 5 of counter. The item master report shows totals and details at item level, and this report covers basically all of the individual reports we had in R4, but all within one report. So this includes the ability to look at usage for all or each of the individual item types, and so it replaces all the separate article, book, journal, thesis, etc. reports that were in R4. The individual item report gives the full details of an item with a direct link to the item in its repository. The detailed results of this report can also be accessed directly by clicking on the title of an item in the results from the item master report. When you access and view your usage statistics, we hope you'll find that the reports are both detailed and flexible enough for you to be able to create reports that suit all your reporting needs. And the reports are driven by the IRUS API. Just before I go into the demonstration, I wanted to mention the metric types and what data are being counted. There are 4 metric types in counter R5 that are relevant to IRUS. So there's the total item requests. This counts the number of requests for the full content of an item. This metric is the closest equivalent to what was counted in IRUS R4 as successful download requests. So have unique item requests. This deduplicates these requests where multiple file types are downloaded from the same item, the same user session. For example, looking at an item in a repository and then somebody downloading the PDF version of it. Then we have total item investigations, which includes, it counts views of records associated with an item, such as metadata about it, as well as the full content. And unique item investigations deduplicates these views of the same item in the same session. Just to note here that the two investigations metric types are only available once repositories have implemented the R5 tracker. In the case of repositories using Pure, this still isn't possible, as Pure have not implemented the R5 tracker. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to share my screen and do the demo for you. Okay, can everybody see the IRUS homepage? Hopefully, yes, they can. Okay. Right, so this is the IRUS R5 service. As I say, it was released back in December 2020. So this is the website. On the left-hand side here are the areas about to find access information about the data, and this other area on the right are more about what IRUS is and what it provides. I'll show you the tabs on the left, which is where the reports are. So looking at the reports, looking at this drop-down menu, you can see the reports available. You can access them directly here by clicking on them, or you can click on the report tab itself. This just brings up a little more information about them. The custom platform master report and the combined R4, R5 platform report are both at the repository level. And you'll see that we've got two other reports at the item level, the custom item master report and the individual item report. We've made it easier to identify institutions and repositories. That means you don't have to know or remember what the name of a repository is. You can just search for it by institution. So going to the first one, as in here, the custom platform master report. As it says, it's here, excuse me, you can select an individual institution, up to 5, or all we've added as well. So if you select all as an option, it's similar to the old repository report 1 in IRUS R4. You can either scroll down the list or you can start typing. For instance, if I select Abate, then it automatically shows the repository, Abate Research Portal. If you have multiple repositories, such as Aston, then it automatically shows they've got 2 repositories. But if you only want to look at one of them, you can easily deselect it by just clicking on the tick or clicking off the tick. That's that. For example, the demonstration here, I'm going to select Anglia Ruskin. So you can change the date range to whatever you want. Again, just by clicking on that, you can either pick from the drop-down list or use the arrows to go back to whatever you want to do. You can do either and just select. You've also got filters here. You can, such as country. Sorry, you can also select, say, how many items you want per page. The default's 50, but you can select up to 100. You can select country here. The default is all, but you can be selective. And then you've got some mandatory filters, the ones that have got the asterisks next to them, which click on there. It says you need to select at least one item type, and you need to select at least one metric type. If you mouse over any of the metric types, we've also added some brief descriptors to help remind you what each of those means. So this selection here, this section here with filters allows you to select what goes into a report and what's included. And then we've got some optional columns as well that you can include, such as item type and country, that give you a bit more breakdown of information to include in a report. So let's start. We've selected Anglia Ruskin and we've changed some dates. I'll just do a few months to make the results as quick and short as possible for the demonstration purposes. We'll go to select all item types. We'll look at all item types and we'll look at total item requests. As I say, this is the one that's most like the old R4 downloads. So once we've done that, we just click on Generate Report. And here you'll see it gives a very quick, nice overview for that repository for the whole period you've selected and broken down by month as well. And you can easily change, if you want, you can easily change, sorry, to see all metric types if you want to, And instead of having to go and run the report again, you can just select all metric types and update report. From this, you can see the 4 metric types I talked about before with the data split between them. So hopefully you saw how quick and easy that was. You don't have to go back and run a new report. You can just update the existing one. And at the bottom here as well, it shows that all reports are exportable CSV, TSV, or JSON. Alternatively, you might want to see how these items are broken down by item type. So by selecting item type in the optional column and then update the report again, this gives a summary of the metric types at the top and then details below of each item type. And you'll see that the 4 metric types we mentioned each have a row within each of the item types. So each item type gets a row for each of those 4 metric types if you want to do that. You will also see something to note here, that if you selected more than 1 metric type, like we selected all metric types here, then you can't sort on the columns and you'll see a message saying sort not available as multiple metric types selected. But if you just select 1 metric type there and update the report, then you'll see that you can sort by any of the columns you want. They're all sortable. So just selecting 1 metric type, as I've done there, instead of the default, then you can sort on. I mean, the default is obviously for this case, it's by the reporting period total is the default, but you can, for instance, click on item type to sort by the available item types and see the results from that as well, if you want to do that. You can also, if you want, have a look at by country as well and just update the report. And then you'll see the usage by country. Again, usually by reporting total is the top one. So in this case, an article is used most of all by the UK as a country. Another thing you can do on this report, if you want to compare different repositories, so let's just pick some at random here. So say Cardiff University and Imperial, you could start typing and open, collect those. You can see automatically by doing that, all the repositories are included. For this example, we'll remove Ordo because that's just separate data repository. So we'll just look at those 3 and we'll just look at articles. So that wouldn't, no point having a data repository looking at that. And we'll just look at total item requests and we'll stick with the same dates we had before and update report. This is comparing them. So then you get an overview for this set of repositories there and the reporting period total. But again, you can sort on any of those if you want to. And it gives you an overview, as I say. You can sort by platform or item type. You can also add in the item type and country if you want to do that as well. If you want to do that, update report. You can have a look at those, so you can include all those information even when you're comparing different repositories if you want to do that. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the flexibility of what you can do with this report, and see it covers a lot of use cases even at platform level. Also how quickly and easy it is to update or change without having to go back and start from scratch. And that hopefully will save you some time because you can manipulate data directly on the website if you want to, rather than having to only be able to download spreadsheets and manipulate the data afterwards. So questions you might want to use this report to answer. You might want, what was the total of downloads across all our repositories? Again, you can select your institution, select which repositories you're interested in, set a date range, choose all item types and choose the metric request, total item request or unique item request, and that will tell you that. But equally, you can use it to look at to answer what's the total usage of all items in our repository. Again, you can do that the same way, and you might want to choose total requests and unique requests for that and have a look at the total across all. You might want to investigate what was the most requested or investigated item or article or thesis, etc. in your repository. Again, using this report, you can select your institution and your item types and metric types of your preference, and then you can sort by clicking on a column heading as long as you've only selected a single metric type. You might want to know what type of item is most requested or investigated. So for instance, let's just do one, let's just do Cardiff. Let's just do Cardiff, for instance. What's the most requested or investigated? So again, here we'll do it as an example. We'll click select all metric types, total investigation, and we'll just click by metric type. So we can see by metric type, and that shows that the most used by far was an article and what the article was as well. The article and the metric type and the reporting period total. You might want to know trends or patterns of use over the last year, month. All the reports provide monthly granularity, so it will allow you to analyse trends over time. The available date range will depend on when your institution joined IRUS, of course, and we are hoping to add trend visualizations in the future. Moving on to the custom item master report. Let's have a look at this one. This allows you to view usage data at an item level, and you can select an individual or up to 5 institutions. As you can select up to 5 institutions, some institutions have up to 3 repositories, so you are searching across the large group if you want to do comparisons. These reports are quite large, so do bear that in mind if you're searching across a large date range, for example. To keep things simple for the demo, I'm just going to stick with one repository. In this case, I'm going to go Aberystwyth, and the start date we'll pick August review. We'll just look at articles, and we'll look at total and unique item request, for instance. You have the same options you did in the platform report, so let's look at those and generate report. So as you'll see at the top here, you get a summary table of the 2 metric types that you selected, and then you get the full details, the full results below. Because we're looking at the item level, you'll also see here we have a lot more in the optional columns options. So you can include such as publisher, author, authors, platform, DOI, etc. And again, you can go down to country level as well. As with the platform reports, all columns are sortable again if you've only selected one metric type. So as an example, another example, we'll do, let's do all item types, total requests. And if I select all item types and click update report, you'll see at the top there, you get a short summary showing the number of items in this report, so over 3,088, and also the total of item requests during the period selected. And then you get the individual items below. As we selected all item types, you do have the option in the summary to see the breakdown by item types. We selected all item types up here. Yeah. So in this summary, you do have the option being able to see all the item types by clicking on this plus sign. And that shows you just a breakdown of the item types within that report. Here again, you can order by columns if you want to. So the default is by report period, but if you wanted to, you can click on anything. You can click on the item types, for instance, to see them, all the articles that are shown first, or whatever you want to do. Yeah. And of course, then if you want, you can add authors. If you want to add authors, for instance, you can do that, and then you can always sort on authors if you want to do that. So you get ones with no author at first, or not available ones, and then you get alphabetical by author. So questions you might want to use for this report: how many downloads a particular item has had within 2022? This is an example I'm going to use. It's a real example, this one. So somebody wanted to know, came in a couple of weeks ago to the help desk. So I might as well use it as an example. It was Bath Bar University. They wanted to know how many downloads a particular item had within 2022. and they thought they might want to use the individual item report for that. But I explained to them this is a way of doing it that seemed to suit their needs better, and they agreed. So I'll select January, so it's the year so far, so it's all items, or all usage the item had within this year so far. And they didn't have, the only way you can use, which I'll show you in a moment about the individual item report. The individual item report, you can only search by knowing an IRUS ID or a DOI or an OAI ID, and they didn't have that to hand, but they did have the, they sent me the example where it was in the repository. So using that, it turned out it was a thesis titled Madness and Monologic Fiction. So you can use this. I suggested using this. I told them those dates, and I selected just the thesis because that's what it was, and the total item request, that's what we wanted to know, and the metric type, and then we clicked on update, well, it's update report, get report in their case. So you see there were 131 items that came back, but what I suggested to them, because it's a lot, if you do a Control F search of that page or the next page, it was over 2 pages, you'll find that item listed there. And this was the Madness and Monologic Fiction thesis item they were talking about. So there you can see straight away there've been, for that particular item, there have been 28 downloads this year so far. What you can do, you can then go to an individual item, the individual item report, by clicking on the title of the item. So if I click on this, it opens up a new tab with the individual item report, and it shows the greatest breakdown of that item. It gives the most details about the item, but it also includes all requests from when it was first ever recorded. In this case, it started in January 2020. It's the fullest detail about the item, including a direct link to the item in the repository. If you wanted, because you can scroll along, you could just select the months you were interested in, as in the ones in 2022, and add them up. But in this case, it seems much more logical, because this shows the reporting period total for all the times that's been in IRUS. It seemed much more logical to go to use the item master report and just answer the question by finding that. That's all they wanted to know, the how many times that item had been downloaded this year. So that's one use you can make of it. As I've just shown, we have the individual item report. Let's do another example for that. What we can, the individual item report shows details down to item level. There, it shows details down to item level, and daily use as well as monthly use. And you can search by, say, but you have to know a DOI or an OAI ID or the IRUS ID to be able to find it. The DOI or the OAI are optional columns that you could add in, you could find from the previous report to be able to use it. But if you don't know them, then that's a good way of being able to search using the custom item master report. Let's just run a different report from the custom item master report as an example here. So if I use the select white rows, and we'll get rid of this e-theses, we don't want that one. We're just going to look at articles. Sorry, just look at articles, for example. Selected those date range and total item requests. And let's generate that report. So that will take a little longer to do because we're looking at white rows. There we go. So if this is an example then of all their articles, and you'll see there's lots of items, sort of 67,000 items. But if, for example, because we're looking at this, we want to look at the item report, we can click on the title here of this first one, for example. It opens up this separate tab with an individual item record. Yeah, so by clicking on that, you can see that. You can only select one metric at a time with this report, but it does, as I showed before, it shows the details of the title, the author, the item type, the DOI, direct link to the URI in the repository, in host repository. And where available, as you'll see on this side, we've also included on metric donut and citation details too, where they're available. The report below shows the usage data figures for the reported period and by month. You can't select a date range using this report. As I say, it depends on the individual item. It's included from the first month with counts to the latest processed month. You do have the option to show breakdown by country. You can select it either here by ticking show breakdown by country, or you can click on the plus arrow here without having to update the report. You'd have to, if you click the other one, you'd have to update report. Here you can just look at it anyway. And it shows by report, total period, the country. But again, by doing this, you can always sort by country. If you want to see the alphabetical list of the country, it'll show you that way as well. Okay, if you notice here in the summary table here, the DOI does have an I button next to it. Not in all cases, obviously, but this one it does in my example. And this shows that multiple items have that DOI. So by clicking on it, you can view, as it says there, view the consolidated item report for this DOI. So if you click on that, it shows you that there are 2 repositories that have the same DOI. So you show the details for all items. You'll see that as well as the White Rose research, it's also in Manchester Research Explorer. So it gives you the 2 options. Again, you can also show breakdown by platform and country, again by ticking there or by ticking platform there. So on this example, obviously they're mainly White Rose at the top, but there is Manchester ones further down as well. But there, that shows you that they're in 2 repositories. You'll see the 2 repositories. Let's go back up here. There. Yeah, so questions you might have on that. You might want to know how well a particular item's been used. Again, you can choose individual item report if you know a DOI or an AOI ID, or you can find it by clicking on the item title as I've just shown as a result of the custom master report that was there before. Okay, so let's mention a couple of other reports we've got. We've got the combined R4 platform report. We've recently added these 2 reports I'm just going to show you now. So this is a combined R4, R5 platform report, and it gives you the full range of available data for a repository. So you no longer need to run and combine reports with the old R4 service reports. This report displays downloads, what we called in R4, from July 2012 right through to December 2019, where they were available in R4, and also then the total item requests in R5 from January 2020 onwards. So we've got details possibly going back to July 2012. Again, you can select up to 5 institutions or all, and their associated repositories. As an individual example, I'll just go with Abate. Now I'm going to select 2017 July for this report, and you'll see I did that because I checked and they started in August 2017. So you can see July 2017 there was nothing. And that's why I picked that one to show you. But obviously it depends when the institution started, when you can look back. But here you can see right the way through, regardless of whether it was R4 or R5, the reporting period total, and also the monthly breakdown for all the months. And it shows there where we switch from R4 to R5. You can see that there, and then all the latest ones as well. So that's a quick way of being able to do that in one report. So for instance, you might want to know what was the downloads or total item requests usage over all the months we've had data in IRUS. So using this report, you can find that out. Okay, and then the other one we've got fairly recently is the item stats by ORCID. Again, this allows you to search for an orchid to see usage of all outputs for a particular author, making it easier for you to share with your researchers. As an example, I'm just going to pop in an orchid that I know. Generate report. So where a research output is deposited, I'll just make this load. Okay, there we go. So this is, and it shows the author and their orchid and the number of items known to IRUS and wherever they happen to be. So there's White Rose, there's also a University of Liverpool repository there. Where a research output is deposited in more than one repository and contains the author orchid information, they'll appear as separate entities from different repositories, as you can see there. Depending on the metadata from the respective repositories, the title and author lists may not be identical. So, for example, this large-scale genome, the not quite identical, some lower and higher case letters, and the author list might be slightly different because they're from two repositories. But at least you can see that they are shown, but relating to which repository they were in. There is also, we've changed the way we collect orchids in IRUS so that we provide much better coverage now across all repositories, and we include checks for valid orchids. This we've now been doing as part of a regular process for a few months, and we've got much better coverage than in the previous service, but we do need help from repositories to expose orchids. And there is an FAQ, one of our FAQs, which is titled, How does IRUS collect and verify orchids? So it's explained in that FAQ if you want to take a look at that. Again, obviously questions to why you might want to use this report. It's, you know, what you want to know the usage of all items by a particular author. As far as all reports go, all reports, questions you may have for all these reports, again, all reports, if you wanted to know trends or patterns of use over the last year, month, etc. All reports provide monthly granularity and you should be able to, allowed to analyse trends over time. And the available date range will depend on when your institution joined IRUS, of course. But trend visualizations, we're hoping again to be able to add those in the future. Account reports are produced on a monthly basis, so that allows for better analysis and exclusion of robot activities and keeps data sets to a manageable size. However, IRUS does provide provisional daily statistics for a limited rolling period, and these are currently available via the API, only the API at the moment. If you wanted to know where the usage originates, which country, as I hopefully demonstrated, the custom platform master report and the custom item master report both include options to include a breakdown by countries based on API, and the individual item report also shows that breakdown by country option. I'm briefly going to mention we've also, those are the main reports anyway, but we've also got some manage admin reports. Just mention these briefly. So we've got DOI duplicates. These hopefully help you support management of your repository and metadata if you find them useful at all. So DOI duplicates, let's just do Habitat as an example. The DOI duplicates allows you to easily view items with duplicate DOIs in the selected repository. We just completed a major reharvesting and now do regular harvesting. So anything that you have updated in your own repository should be reflected in this report now. So that just shows number of DOIs found with multiple items. And you might want to look at those and see if they are duplicated or not. Item type mappings. Again, let's just have a look at Abte. This shows how we've mapped source item type from a repository to the IRUS item type and the number of associated items. The original item types are kept, but this shows you which IRUS ones have been allocated. You can also click on the number in the total column, for instance, to see items in detail in a separate tab. That opens in a separate tab. For instance, there, that's showing all the books and the information about all the books. The third of the managed ones is processing stats one. It's similar to one we had in R4. This shows details of events that we've received into IRUS and then processed into statistics and then presented back into IRUS. So you can see the incoming events, what we took out didn't cross the IRUS thresholds, what were deleted or withdrawn, what were counter double clicks, and then that turns from the incoming to what were the countable events there. So briefly moving over to support, as I say, we have got guides now that we didn't have before. We've written several guides to help you with using IRUS and working with IRUS data. We've grouped these under using IRUS, working with IRUS statistics, and managing metadata. The one I referred to before was the comparing IRUS counter release 5 and release 4 and release 5 figures to see what the difference is with counting. But do take a look through these and have a look at those, comparing and benchmarking. Again, an explanation about the manage reports I was just talking about as well. We also have FAQs, which are a good place to check for any questions you may have to see if they've already been answered, including the one I mentioned before about how does IRUS collect and verify orchids. And also we have a glossary, which is a good place to check as well, because there's so many words and jargon phrases we use. But it's a good idea if you're not sure about some of the terminology. And also as well, we have webinars, links to the webinars we've had before, we've already recorded, with recording slides and transcripts of previous webinars. Just very briefly, if there is anything you're interested in the policies, if you want any more detailed information about the IRUS tracker protocol itself, or how IRUS excludes the robots and rogue usage, how it goes about doing the processes, the IRUS item types and mapping policy, or if you want to request a takedown, or if you want to look at our recommended methods to expose identifiers, then please have a look at the policy area. Just one final point to make in general, it's just at the moment what IRUS cannot help with. If you've got a question, can I view information and trends about article deposits? This is covered again in one of our FAQs. Counter and therefore IRUS currently only capture information on items that have been used. So we don't have any mechanism at the moment for capturing information about deposits. IRUS focus is on usage, so deposits information falls outside that scope. Okay, that's enough talking from me. That's everything from me for the demo. So I'm going to go back to the slides and then we'll go back to questions. So let me stop sharing that. And I will share. Slides. Hopefully we're all back with the slides. Yeah, that's enough talking for me. So over to questions really. Alice, do we have any questions?
There's nothing in the chat just yet, but we'll give people
that's all right.
a couple of minutes to have a little think and a process. And also if people want to put their hands up or let us know.
Hopefully nobody fell asleep.
No, I'm sure they did. We've got a couple of questions.
Okay, if you want to read them out, read each one out and then we'll try and answer them.
So the first question is from Robin. Is item investigation just people looking at the item, not downloading? So a question around what counts as an item investigation.
Laura, are you on the call as well?
Yes, I am. Oh, yeah, I can pick that one up.
Okay.
Yeah. So an item investigation would include people looking at the item and downloading it. So it includes both, so it's any interaction with the item. So the investigation should always be equal or greater than the number of requests. All requests are also an investigation. hopefully that makes sense. So sort of picking up the next question around Pure, repositories that use Pure, what you'll find in IRUS is the investigation count will be the same as the request count, because we're not picking up those additional ones. I guess Paul's just added into the chat that investigation equals a metadata view and downloads, and indicates the overall activity against that item. So hopefully that answers your question, Robin.
Yeah, I think Robin's pleased with that. So did you say you answered the second question about the negotiations with Pure?
Okay, so yeah, Linda's asked a question about how the negotiations with Pure are going. I wouldn't say we're negotiating with Pure at the moment. We approached them a few years ago and they were very reluctant to include the code. And so what we are saying is that if you as users of Pure want this functionality to be within IRUS, then we recommend that you put in a request to Elsevier for that addition to be made. We do have people in our user group that are also on the Pure user group, and we think that will be the best mechanism for convincing Elsevier to add the necessary code in. Great, so yes, any Pure users on the call, I really strongly encourage you to encourage Elsevier to take this on as a development piece.
Great. And we've got a question from Catherine. How can we check whether IRUS holds the correct details for our repository?
Could you clarify what you mean by the correct details? You mean about your repository or the items in the repository? I guess we could answer both. I mean, on the website, if you go to the participants area, I think, sorry.
Yeah, so Catherine's got back to say about the actual repository, so the address name, the URL.
Okay, yes. So within IRUS, let me just, sorry. So within the IRUS website, if you go to, I think it's an about and then participants, you can look at the details, some of the details we hold for your repository. If that doesn't have all the information that you need, just pop a ticket into the help desk and we'll tell you what we've got stored for you. But I think a lot of the data information we hold about your repository should be found on that page.
Yeah, it should have the name of the institution, the name of the repository.
Great. I've got the second question about Pure. So if R5 is implemented, Philip is just wondering whether the new reports will be available on data that date back to the initial sign up to IRUS.
We'd only be able to process data from the point that Elsevier starts sending it. So unless for some reason they've managed to record all that historical information about clicks, which I think is unlikely, I'm not familiar with exactly how it works, and maybe Paul Needham can answer in the chat, which is basically saying no, because effectively they're sending us data, I think, on a daily basis about what's happened in that repository. So that past data wouldn't have been captured. So we'd be processing it from the date that they implement it.
Great, thank you. Just see if there are any more questions coming in. Seems to have trickled off there after a little flurry. But if you have any further questions, please pop them in the chat. Great. We've got a question from Amy. So apologies if I was late. What do we need to do to ensure ORCID data gets to you from a pure user?
So there is some guidance. There's some guidance, as Hilary pointed out, in the website. I'm not sure there's anything in there specific to Pure, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Paul, you're welcome to put something into the chat, or Amy, if you want to get in contact with us, we'll be happy to give you further information on that.
Okay, Paul's just answered to say, make sure ORCIDs are exposed in metadata.
Okay, great. And Paul just added it, preferably in the OAI metadata.
Great. Any further questions? Well, if there are, here we are.
Nope.
One more every time. So Catherine's just asking if we have any suggestions for presenting the data to your institution.
Oh, okay, that's a really good question. So we have some case studies on the R4 website, which you can link to, which gives some examples of how other institutions are presenting data. And we're also working on some case studies at the moment that we're in the process of getting signed off and ready for presentation, which again will give a few examples of how other institutions are working with data. And I think one thing we might want to do there is working much more closely with our user group around sharing ideas and maybe building more of a community so that you can share ideas between institutions about how you go about presenting data to your institution. Also, as Hilary mentioned, we are hoping to start working on some more data visualizations next year, which we know are very popular and much easier for presenting data in a digestible format. But I know a lot of institutions do use summary level data in reports and also newsletters or blog posts. But yes, we'll hopefully be sharing some more case studies soon. Just find a... I'll just put a link into the... I've just put a link to the case studies from the old service into the chat panel.
Great, thanks, Laura. Excellent. So I'm tempting fate again. If there are any other questions, you can always contact us via help@jusc.ac.uk and mention IRUS in the subject line.
Yes, I've just noticed that all the links I've been posting in the chat, I didn't follow the advice that was given at the beginning of the webinar. There we go. So I put in a link to the case studies there, and I know I haven't. Apologies for this, everyone. Okay. So that's a link to the participants list, and this is a link to the case studies. Thank you for pointing that out.
Great. I didn't realise at all. So good job someone did. Yeah, so I think all that's left to say is thank you very much for attending. And yeah, let us know if you have any more questions that pop in your head later on.
Okay. I'll stop the recording now.